Maybe maybe
Um,
take those questions one by one.
yeah, so actually, I'll relate this to something you sort of also sort of got to in the previous part of the of the interview, but then we didn't completely finish. So we were talking about how like over time people do get tired of their job, even if it is like the most wonderful thing. So like if you have ever experienced that, like how do you overcome it and how do you feel like the passion for surgery once again? And I sort of also wanted to ask you about how you manage to keep up with your other interests and passions despite being in such a like time consuming field, based on the number of years, but also just like the scheduling changes and the things that come up with being a surgeon.
Okay. Well, so the issue of burnout is a real problem in all of medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And and I think the way you know that there's a number of ways of knowing that you're suffering from it. And one is when you feel like you're not actually a humanitarian at all, and you really view the patient as a thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's burnout. You know, they call it depersonalization. And I've certainly experienced that. I experienced it in residency. You know, I did my residency long enough ago that there were no hour limits, and it was a little more brutal than it is now. Yeah, right now it's not, I would say not very brutal, although it's still very challenging,
Mm-hmm.
time consuming and all consuming. But I think it used to be it used to be much worse, and so I definitely experienced that. You know, where at some point, and I'm not proud of this, but at some point, I just wish my patients would go away. I wish my work would be over. Right? And it was. Uh, you know, I think the solution to that is almost always rehumanization. You know, solution to dehumanization is depersonalization is find some way of rehumanizing yourself, and then you will relate better to others. Because the patients are always there, they're always sick, they're always needy, and it's always very rewarding. I don't think we take our emotional sustenance from patients. I think we take it from colleagues. And so, you know, having colleagues around, talking to them, um, there's I use a military analogy. The soldier typically does not fight for his or her country. You know, she fights for her buddies, for the person over there, that are in the same, they're in the same situation. And and yeah, you've got this ideal. You're a humanitarian, you're fighting for a country, whatever, you know, you've got these ideals, and you really have to return to them periodically. But the emotional sustenance comes from colleagues, and so collegiality, I think, is an absolute must, necessity, you know, critical burnout preventive, and I managed to get that
Mm-hmm.
with colleagues in residency eventually, and then eventually with colleagues as an attending surgeon. I have not suffered from it since. Now, it also helps to have a stable and loving family environment. You know, I have a wife. We've been together for 30 years, and I have four children, and you know we're close. And I have a religion, and I tend to it. So all that those are also burnout inoculations. You know, it really helps a lot to have the support, and because the fact it is kind of tough out there sometimes. Now about other interests, you know, because another, and this is a related question, because you know one way to get burnt out is to devote all your time and energy to something, one thing, right? That's actually not a smart idea. So having carve outs and also finding ways to make other interests fit into medicine is a key skill. Now, how do you do that? I mean, I had interests in culture and iconography and history, and I've managed to work medicine to them or them into medicine. So, for instance, I'm a colorectal surgeon, right? So I know about anal fistula. So I was reading Shakespeare, and I read the play All's Well That Ends Well, and noticed that it was about a cure for fistula.
Mhm.
So, what's Shakespeare driving at, and what does his audience know um, when when he's talking about fistula? And it turns out that there was a good story there. I got to tell that story. I got to write a paper where I traced the Shakespeare's cure for fistula. Well, Shakespeare is always cribbing from things. So I found out where he's cribbing from. You
Mhm.
know, it turned out to be a story hundreds of years earlier and older, and then came up with a coherent story. It's a great article. I'm really happy about that. And you could publish it in the medical journal, and for that matter, also in a Shakespeare journal. You
Mhm.
know, and without my particular peculiar knowledge set, that wouldn't have worked.
Mhm.
Another example. Um, you know, I was interested in the caduceus, the snake on a stick that's a symbol of medicine.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, why would a pagan symbol like that persist in a Judeo-Christian world?
Mhm.
There's a reason, right? Most pagan symbols did not persist, and that one did. There's a reason because there's a Judaic version of the caduceus, the Nehushtan, and I've written a bunch of papers for mostly non-medical journals on the Nechushtan as it plays out over time and turns into other symbols, things you'd be surprised at. You know, the Gadsden flag where the snake says, "Don't tread on me." The fouled anchor of the that the Marines use as their symbol,
Mhm.
symbol of sailing, of nautical symbol. Hard to imagine what that has to do with the caduceus, but it's got the same origin.
Mhm.
And anyway, so those are my peculiar interests. I get the chance to take off from medicine, which I maintain as a very strong member of the humanities as a discipline. You manage to take off from medicine and venture into various parts of the humanities, and then can bring it back. Uh, so I think having broad interests is good. You get and if you get the chance, I'm in academics, and so I like writing papers. But that's in there's other ways to do that too. I think almost everyone can bring their interests into medicine and somehow combine them.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah. Um, I guess my next, actually, no, I just want to say I've actually always wondered too, like about the symbol of like medicine with this like snake around the sort of separate thing. But
Well,
that
if you ever want to
sounds
talk
really
on that, I have a couple of good talks.
sure. Yeah, if you can even like send me resources or something, I'll like read up on it
Sure.
because recently we were building like a new high school too, and the mascot that they came up with was a snake, and there's been like quite a few controversies on that. And then I was sort of thinking about that, and I was like, so and then I volunteer at Stanford Valley Care, so I was thinking about like the logo there, and I'm like, why is the symbol of like medicine, like why does it involve a snake? So it's something I'd sort of thought about, and I thought it was interesting. And so it's super cool that you like got the chance to research and sort of think more about that. But moving along from that, the next question that I sort of had for you is about, I guess, the environment at UC San Diego and why you chose to sort of work there and stay there, um, and just thoughts you can share about the work that you sort of do there and the work that happens.
Medicine is an international confraternity. It's certainly you can find you know instantiations of it almost anywhere, right? And so UC San Diego in some ways is not special. Now to me it's incredibly special because it's my institution and I want to work for this institution and do the absolute best for it. It's my cradle to grave kind of institution. But I imagine I probably could say this about if I were in Fresno or Augusta, Georgia, or New York City, and
Mhm.
about my institution. I love my institution because it contains great colleagues and affords me the opportunity to do good things. Why am I here? I'm here uh, because my wife and I were looking for a university that would hire us both. She's an electrical engineering professor,
Mhm.
and so it had to be a full service university. and
Mhm.
it had to also have a place where there was grandparents for our children. And and so it was either Southern California or in New York, New Jersey area for us. We ended up in San Diego, very happy there. Now, it's got a lot of great characteristics. We've had good chairs, we've had good leadership, we've had a growing institution. We're not in the Rust Belt. There's high morale in town, and the city's growing. So there's a lot of good things about UC San Diego. And right now we're under very good leadership, and we have a constantly expanding program. And I was the first colorectal surgeon here 27 years ago, and now there's 7 colorectal surgeons and a real working division, of which I'm not the chief, which is
Mhm.
fine. But the point, I mean, my point is, I feel like I've built something, and also at this point, we've trained a lot of the surgeons who are in town and doing well, and also a lot of academics around the country, and so you feel good about the whole community, and then about your own piece of it. Now, I in some ways it's not special, and I think I could be saying this about other institutions, but I would defend UC San Diego as a great place to train. I think it's a program that has it's on the upslope. It's been on the upslope for a long time, continues to be that way.
Mhm.
And when residents come, then I interview them, when potential residents, medical students who are just graduating and come and interview for surgery, I can tell them this is one of the excellent programs, and you would do well here. You know, there are some things in our department that are truly national class, and there's some that are still under construction. And I think we have good leadership that understands what the two are, and what needs to be fixed.
Just lastly, I think we've like gone through all of my questions. Um, this last thing that I sort of want to ask you about is just what advice would you give to high schoolers who are sort of listening to this, and then thinking about pursuing medicine and maybe surgery, like they're considering it. So what would you sort of say to them, and or if you could sort of think back to yourself in high school, what do you wish that someone had told you?
Yeah. I mean, I think I would advise folks to. Uh, I would strongly advise folks to go into medicine, which is an excellent field,
Mhm.
and anyone who tells you different is probably suffering from burnout, which is an occupational hazard, admittedly, but be careful with meet someone who's suffering from burnout. Don't listen to them too carefully, because this may not happen to you, probably won't,
Mhm.
and also, it's a I can think of no better thing from the point of view of wanting a career. No better thing than being in medicine. I really I feel like it is a it has all the good features of a community, of a profession, of a humanitarian discipline, of a humanistic discipline. So I would strongly encourage people to go into a field like this. There is no bad time and there's no bad field in medicine. And for that matter, if you're worried about times, it's acyclical. It's always needed.
Mhm.
So it's very secure, and you can do a lot of different things with it. So, and then why surgery? Um, Surgery is, if it's for you, you'll find out. It'll grab you. And if it's not for you, that's okay too. Spend as much time in the OR as you can, learn as much as you can, and then you won't view the OR as a black box where patients go in and they come out fixed or they come out altered. You'll know what actually happens there. So I encourage medical students, especially folks who are not going to surgery, to spend as much time in the OR with us as possible.
Mhm.
Um, and then and I also think that people who come to a field late and sort of fall in love with it late, as I did, starting out with a different career choice or different career choice within medicine, um, are often the people who have a lot of staying power because they've actually fallen in love with something, the thing, rather than the ideal.
Mhm.
And people who grow up with the ideal of surgery, they're disappointed, but people who fall in love with the reality of surgery will not be disappointed. So if you find yourself as a third year medical student, or as an early medical student saying, I wanted to be a pediatrician, but this grabs me, or I wanted to be a surgeon, but this grabs me, whatever the thing is, go ahead and get grabbed. It's I always think to follow your passion is poor advice for young people, because I think most of us don't have passions, or rather we have complex ones, which are very hard to define. But once you're in a field, and then you have your choice of several different good things, go ahead and get passionate about something. That'll last.
Okay. Yeah. I just want to end this whole like interview by thanking you for your time, because like there is really like no reason for you to be doing this at 9 p.m., 10 p.m. right now. But just the guidance that you're providing and all that questions that you've answered has proven to be like really beneficial to me, and I'm sure to a lot of different people too. Because in high school, you don't have I mean, I can sort of think ahead to undergrad and what I want to do, but I don't have an idea as far as like medical school. And I don't need to know, but it's just like sort of stepping stone and an idea to sort of think about and consider. So it's awesome that you have, spent so much time, and you've been so patient with all of the technical difficulties that we sort of encountered. So I want to thank you again for your time and effort. Yeah.
Well, very good talking to you, and I'll ask you offline for an address so I can send you some material if you're looking for articles.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I can end the meeting now. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Mhm.
Good talking with you.